Hi, thank you, Mina. I can't compete with that. I nearly didn't want to accept this invite. When you say fintech, techfin, techno, they are all young people. Like more than 50% of ASEAN community, less than 30 years old. But the only way I can fight you, Mina, just to be sexy, I'm going to take off my coat.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay. I wore a coat because last night I was so hungry, I ate 3 plates of rice at 12 midnight. That's not good. But in my line of work, money is little, food is plenty. So that's why I'm here. Maybe I can be a techno startup one day. But I'm here because I couldn't refuse. To me, this is Bank Negara. Yes, not many people have the privilege to be here. Even as a journalist, I've been here less than 10 times over the years. So you are privileged. But this is not about privilege. It brought tears to my eyes, even though I'm a very old moderator, anchor, and editor. At the Rice Bowl Awards ASEAN in Bali, when I was interviewing, I would like to call him my little brother from Thailand, Nop, from Rifin. Rifin solved the issues of millions of Southeast Asians who are facing problems paying the mortgages of their house. Thousands of Asian next generation have lost the cherished properties that they inherited from the previous generation. This young ASEAN male, together with his co-founders, figured out a way. Why don't we use technology? So with Rifin, and they won in 2018, but his story in the interview with me started by, it was all sparked by the fact that it was so tragic that his grandfather's house was lost to them forever because it was taken over by the bank. So it is apt that you are here in Kuala Lumpur because Kuala Lumpur is the confluence of 2 rivers. Lumpur means mud. And you know why it's Kuala? Because in the Industrial Revolution of before, raw materials were important, tin were mined by the rivers, many were eaten by crocodiles, and yet millions came from China and India and neighboring Southeast Asia. But now we want to move forward in the new technology of the 4th Industrial Revolution. I'm an old journalist. I get confused. When I go some places, they say it's fintech, financial technology. When I go to places like Davos that I'm going again next week, they talk about techfin. But whatever it is, to me, that's why I wanted to start with Refin, is always about the people. So this panel is great for me because it enables me to weave and remind you that we're not doing technology innovation for technology innovation's sake, but to make people's life better. Of course, the only lady, I don't know why Rice Bowl organizer always do this to me. They never give many ladies. This is the age of Captain Marvel, right? So the Captain Marvel of technopreneurship for ASEAN, and later the world will find out about her, Cindy Kwa. Please give a big round of applause. In Cindy's DNA, practically and literally, is the old financial industry. The name Kurnia should be familiar to many Malaysians. They were one of the biggest insurance player in the country. I am their was their loyal subscriber before, but she didn't remain there. She could have just, moved with the old industry, but she used the experience to move into new areas. And now with Karmana and Sunday, I have 136 Thai blood, but I do envy my Thai counterparts here because with her, every day is Sunday in Thailand, especially from a fintech perspective. And now, for those who are our visitors, we welcome you again. But you might not know, and we forgive you, that we have one of the oldest prime minister in the world at 94. But if you only know that, meaning you've been consuming too many foreign Western media articles, go to astroawani.com. And you will know that we also have one of the youngest minister ever at 28, the Youth and Sports Minister. So my next panelist is somebody that I will always use against this minister. Hard to fight him, he's a debater. But Zach was supposed to be our pin-up poster, just like Lionel Messi is for the world. But of course, he left sports to go into the multi-million US dollar industry. And now with Curlec, so I just asked him, tell me what Curlec is. I'm very old. They are the re-aggregator, can I put it that way? The one platform that we want to do direct debits, especially B2B. In the old days, it was very difficult. My first job was a frontline banker for Maybank, and I know how difficult auto debit is at that time. You got to do it manually, but young people like him sat together, decided they didn't want to help Malaysia in football. Biarlah Harimau Melaya ranking 160, make millions, and now he is here, and he will be the poster boy for us also. And these are not old guys, I'm the old ones. These are young people because they are very young in what they do in their very old and established institutions. MDEC has been around for the longest time, but it started with the name multimedia. Now it's Malaysian Digital Economy Corporation. Shows my age, right? So I know all this. You can ask him off this panel about why and what happened to Multimedia Super Corridor. But today, he's going to paint us the hope when everyone else is saying so many things about Malaysia. But our hope, Fintech and otherwise, is so clear moving forward. And Hizam has loads of wisdom. For 20 years, he's been looking at subject matters related to this. And my new friend, also our host for today, Suhaimi Ali, nice to meet you. He looks at Bank Negara's younger side, I would term it that way. I am so glad that the Assistant Governor welcomed the rebels, because at least now we know, instead of just being a regulator, Bank Negara now welcomes rebels, hackers to innovate, but within a mitigate risk environment. So I'm going to go straight to the point now. I know the title is Fintech, Disruption, Regulations and Collaboration lah. But the fact is, people like you and me, from the 600 million over in ASEAN, only how many are bankable? I'll give you one example in Malaysia. The biggest state in Malaysia is not this side. It's across the South China Sea. It's called Sarawak, on the island of Borneo. One of the very nice places for you to go to, and take my word for it, I know, I'm a journalist, it's called Barrio. It's the meeting point of the highlands of Borneo, where Sabah, Sarawak, and Kalimantan, you can just walk around. It's like you fly with a plane among the clouds, tips of the mountains, and then suddenly there's a plateau. That place is called Barrio. But if they have a 1,000 US dollar pay, automatically their pay will be 750 ringgit. 50 US dollars. You know why? Because it costs them 250 just to fly out to an ATM machine that can dispense cash and then come back to where they are living. So not only if we don't use technology well, it will increase the gap of society digitally and even financially. So my first question, the wisdom people, I go to you last, I go young people first. Cindy, you could have just do the insurance the old way. That would have been a great choice for you. It's already there around you. But you chose to use technology to disrupt and to make life better. However, you didn't choose your home country. You chose our very friendly, nice to go to and see Thailand. Tell us why.
Hi, everyone. My name is Cindy, CEO and co-founder of Sunday. So actually, I'm Malaysian, but I founded my startup in Thailand and we've been a 2.5 years startup. two reasons why I actually started out of Thailand was actually, as a founder, when you're building a proof of concept, something from scratch, the top of your mind is always your business model. When you rightly said this morning by the opening speeches that ASEAN is home to 650 million population, you need to build a business model that's scalable in a very highly localized region. And Thailand was a chosen place to prove and to test my business model because when it comes to insurance, where I am in, it's one of the most fragmented regions in the world, I have to say. So to build that business model there and subsequently launch in countries like Indonesia, Malaysia, or anywhere in ASEAN would really solidify and validate that business model. The second thing, when we're also founders and CEOs, then you have to build a team as well to support your vision. So I actually managed to find my leadership team, my chief data, from Thailand as well. I managed to scale my team from software engineers to data scientists quite affordably. And also quite fast because we wanted speed to market. So those were the two options.
So in 1 minute, what does Sunday do every day?
So Sunday, we're a full-stack insurtech company using data and technology to personalize insurance products and services to all our customers, be it SME individuals or strategic partners as well.
You speak like a true CEO. Let me say it in a very layman term like me, because I'm not sophisticated at all. If you hit somebody else's car, just take a photo, upload. Can I do that with Sunday?
Yeah, so actually part of it, one of our solutions, besides using AI to actually come up with an algorithm to predict risk and convert that to premiums, we also have our design principles also to deliver service back to your control.
Lady drivers, you like that or not? I'm looking at you, Yan. Oh, you're smiling only, lady driver. Zach, I've bridged the gap since the onset to people. You can share with Cindy. Yeah. Okay, we talk about football later, but I want to talk about Curlec because it was not something natural in your ecosystem for you to do what you're doing now, right? When you were studying.
As in my life?
Yeah.
Yeah, no. Far from it.
Probably girls and footballs. But go back to that instant where you had to choose to be a technopreneur. Share with us why technopreneurship and why fintech.
So besides obviously being a failed footballer,
yes, you're not. He was supposed to be our top footballer. Okay, never mind. Move on.
Besides being a failed footballer, actually no, my sort of education and background was actually a legal one.
Yes.
I studied law. I qualified to be a lawyer, a barrister, and then, to my parents' dismay, decided not to be a lawyer. So for me, I've always been interested in entrepreneurship. So I tried my hand in various startups, and generally speaking now, new businesses tend to be technology businesses. And subsequently had a little stint in banking, which I know is very far away from entrepreneurship. But I did find, at this point I was based in London, which is, sort of the financial hub, or one of the financial centers of the world, and really a hotbed for fintech. And sort of being part of that, I sort of found a lot of interest in it and had that desire and sort of got presented with the opportunity a couple of years ago to come back to Malaysia and start a venture up. And sort of that's how this all came about.
Why fintech?
Why fintech?
When you're looking at it, you can do so many things. Dating app will be more sexier, right? But why fintech?
It's true. But I sort of, on the one hand, I've got tech as well as financial background, so sort of that was a natural step. But I think now we're sort of seeing with tech more generally, all of it's becoming fintech.
Were you having that naughty thought that I'm looking at, not Suhaimi but Bank Negara as a whole, all these big regulators, big players, Maybank, Public Bank, whatever, and I'm just going to go there and disrupt them.
Yeah, there's something quite nice about it.
See? If I don't ask, never say. So the point is, you disrupted not just from a technology standpoint, you disrupted what is an accepted norm in ASEAN especially, that your parents want you to be responsible enough to be a doctor, lawyer, accountant, or an engineer. You disrupted that, right? First.
I guess, yeah.
Were they angry with you?
A little bit, yeah.
So now that you're bringing in millions?
TBC.
They're waiting for your ampao for Chinese New Year. So I just want to get that through. Okay, now that we've passed that, for the young people, let's go to the young and old. Hizam, you know, we can talk forever about multimedia and now digital economy, but from the fintech perspective, if we do not begin to disrupt things ourselves, outside forces will come and disrupt us anyway. My industry, the media and communication, is clear. 80% roughly of revenue in the media and communication industry in Malaysia goes not to Malaysian companies. They go to Google and Facebook. And you see the impact of that. 4 physical newspapers has closed down in our country. So this is what I want to go. Disruption, regulations, collaboration. Before I get to regulations, how do we institutionalize and make it mainstream, disrupting ourselves? Because if we don't, we're going to be disrupted, especially from a fintech perspective.
That's a very broad question, actually.
Because you have broad shoulders.
Change is inevitable. I think in order for disruption to happen, you first have to disrupt ourselves. And I'm representing MDEC, and it's a government organization. First, most important is to have that mindset change in ourselves first. And I'm speaking about mindset change among the government. Why this disruption needs to happen before we get disrupted. You mentioned about the change of name of Multimedia Development Corporations to Malaysia Digital Economy Corporation. I guess that is a great reflection that within the government itself, there's an urgency, a need for us to start looking at digital economy extremely seriously. There's still huge room of improvement, right? Cam and I always argue with regards to things that the government needs to do. I also feel that apart from changing mindset, the role of disrupting ourselves and the role of bringing Malaysia to the next level of digital transformation can't just be done by the wisdom people, as you're referring to, Suhaimi and I.
Full of wisdom.
Right? The industry themselves would also need to play the role.
Okay, I want to interject there, and this goes for many other Southeast Asian nations. But the government has been the biggest, powerful, most force ever since they were born. Even for young people like this. How do we switch that? Because you're from the inside, so I just want to know.
One, I guess the government right now hires younger people in cabinet, right? And that brings in new different sets of mindset. I was just with the 3 boys, and I told them that there need to be a bit of a diversity. 3 youth have been appointed to be in the National Economic Action Council in representing the voice of the youth.
Yes.
That is also, I think, a great strategy of the government in looking at new ways of thinking and helping the young to be impacting
that
the mind of the old.
Our policies now are more open for disruption.
It's a lot more liberalized, right? I think there's a urgency, there's this thinking behind the need to disrupt, the need to change.
Okay.
But disruption comes with its pros and cons as well, right? Of course, there are some...
We go pros first, cons we go later.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, pros, it's needed. It's needed. In the context of fintech, you know, I always like to speak about ASEAN, and I think it's very apt because it's ASEAN Rice Bowl.
Yes.
If you look at fintech, more than 50% of ASEAN populations are unbanked.
Yes.
And that itself is an opportunity. Within Malaysia, while we are pretty much in a good state of bank, but when it comes to financial health and financial sustainability, there's still a lot of opportunities as well, right? So while we are waiting for, I mean, Korea did it as well, while we're waiting for the traditional financial institutions to go and disrupt themselves and providing convenience and opportunities for people in barrio to be able to have access to insurtech or to be having access to capital. That's why I said the industry needs to play that role as well. Financial institutions would also need to get onto the wave of fintech.
But if you go to industry, industry only wants to go to hot, sweet spots, financially viable, got revenue places. But rural areas, in the deeper rainforests where there are orangutans and everything else. So that's why the role of regulators and policymakers are very important, because we can't just let for-profit rule the day. It must be tempered with managing it also to the other side. So because my new friend, Saudara Suhaimi, is the Director of Financial Development and Innovation for Bank Negara, for the longest time, and we can't fault people, like Bank Negara is like the custodian. It's like the gate that you have to go through for banking and finance. You want to take deposit from people, don't have anything, you'll be in trouble. Any transaction also must go through them. But how do you move? The beret helps, but how do you move to let now people see Bank Negara that we are not just regulators, we now want to spark new ideas, rebel with a cause, and disrupt. Because it's almost oxymoronic. You're supposed to ensure stability, but at the same time, you're advocating disruption.
So, thank you for the question. Regulation is there to basically protect the effective functioning of the system. It is not there to protect the incumbent players. Regulation is not meant to stifle innovation. And because of that, at least within the Central Bank of Malaysia, there's a lot of realization that we can benefit from the advancement in technologies. And because of that, we have embarked on reforms of our regulation to be more principle-based instead of rule-based, and focus more on outcomes instead of prescribing the kind of rules that we used to prescribe in the past. And this is basically to allow players out there to innovate, and to ensure that by innovating, they are able to basically serve the underserved, because with the advancement of technology, the cost of onboarding or serving new customers is almost zero compared to the cost that the traditional players would incur. And because of that, the potential to serve the underserved and the untapped market is actually greater. And you know, we do a lot of things in terms of facilitating innovation in the market, and we can talk a bit more about that in the next round of discussion.
It's not complete if you're in a bank, not talking about money. Throw us the money figure for the potential of fintech in Malaysia, and of course you would have the figure for Southeast Asia.
Well, I think if you talk about ASEAN, now in 2018 it has reached to the amount of US 100 billion. And the internet economy in ASEAN alone has grown at about 44% growth year on year. And that shows the significant potential for fintech to disrupt and serve the region, in particular ASEAN, given that we have differing level of development within countries in ASEAN. So there are countries that are quite well served in payment ecosystem, but there are countries that are just about to start in that space. So there are potential for you to grow in any way you want to go in ASEAN. And in Malaysia, the kind of development that we are seeing in terms of the startup players itself, 3 years ago, we only had about 30 or so fintech players in the country. Last year, we had about 200, and the number is actually growing to about 250 now players.
What's the quality?
Well, the quality varied. There's a lot of issues with regard to getting funding, not at the startup level, but mainly when they need to scale up. There's also a lot of issues in terms of understanding the regulatory ecosystem and the compliance requirement. So there's a lot of actually engagement that happens between the regulators and the players to bridge that gap.
Let's raise the bar a bit now. Let's look at that more than 100 billion thing. 2025 is the year that we in Southeast Asia are supposed to be very much one community. You know, it's not just about you go and land at an airport, then there's a migration counter saying ASEAN lane. What about financially? Can I seamlessly bring my whatever financial resources that I have seamlessly across the 10 ASEAN nations? How do I move money? So I have to start with you, Cindy, since most of your wealth are in Thailand, but your home base is in KL personally. So how do you see the across-border movement of financial stuff and instruments? Because I think what we can do better than EU is think about this from the beginning, before we really have seamless mobility.
So for us, insurance is also one of the highly most regulated industries in the world. But for us in the industry, it's all about risk. So when we're managing risk and when you're managing the global risk landscape, right? So you have risk from mobility to healthcare and everything else. So how do you democratize risk? But more importantly, as an industry and as a digital insurer of the future, we want to build a sustainable company, and sustainable company means having to manage dynamic risk that, like I mentioned, is highly localized in all 10 countries, economies in ASEAN. So for us, being a data and technology-driven company, we're building our own core system first, which can manage very dynamic risk in many ways. And that itself will allow us to propel ourselves outside from just one country.
Yes.
The second thing is because our business model is that we, as a startup, we look at the full value chain. So that's why we're a digital insurer and we have a license to underwrite.
Okay.
That itself, in ASEAN right now, in each economy, it's in a very different stage at the moment. So when it comes to that, and there's a barrier to entry for us. So licensing, how do all the central banks in 10 economies work together to come up with a standardized blueprint?
So Darul Suhaimi, is that being looked at?
There are areas that the regulators are working together, for example, in terms of cross-border payment and linking up our faster payment systems among countries. So that is actually on the table right now. And countries like Malaysia, Singapore, and Thailand, we are working at it right now. But again, if you look at the economic aspiration of ASEAN with regard to economic integration, we are not modeling ourselves against the EU.
Correct.
So we are not looking at ASEAN as a single market, given the different level of development within the region. But there's a lot more efforts to actually harmonize our regulation to make sure that we can benefit from each other.
One of the biggest
system.
key enabler of economic activities for us is tourism. For those of you, Yan, have you been to Thailand? Driving. If you drive your car, we have the North-South Highway to cover the peninsula of Malaysia. You can drive from the southernmost tip, which is Johor Bahru, near Singapore, to the border of Thailand, let's say in 8 hours. But sometimes you're stuck at the border for more than 2 hours. One of the things is because you're supposed to buy Thai insurance to cover your vehicle to go in. So if we have TechFin and Fintech or whatever it is, I can drive to any 10 ASEAN countries and I don't have to worry buying every new insurance for every entry. So I'm bringing it down to that layman perspective like that. But the fact is, according to report in 2017-18, 70% of wage payments and government transfers in ASEAN countries are in the form of cash. So I'm going to go back to Suhaimi. How can we digitize that faster so that for those who are not even in FinTech or TechFin, I mean, it's a no-brainer, right? If that 70% move digital, then these services are needed.
Correct. So, for example, if I were to quote the example of Malaysia, payment by government is actually 100% now online. It's all digitized. The one that is not 100% digitized is actually when government is actually accepting funds. So the target for this year is actually 60%. It has moved from last year of 20-odd%. So we are actually digitizing government machinery to be able to embrace online payment wholly. Similarly, other parts of the region will need to catch up. If you look at Indonesia, for example, they have rolled out their 5-year blueprint in terms of how they're going to migrate the entire ecosystem to e-payment as well.
Okay.
So there are other countries that are lagging behind, but as all of us connect to each other through cross-border payment and all that, sooner or later we will get linked up.
So how do you look at the e-banking thing that Singapore, I mean, in the news lately, if you Google, that's the thing. So can you put a perspective to us? How is that affecting everyone else?
So it depends on the kind of regulatory regime that you put in place. For example, if you look at the digital banking policy in UK, it is actually meant to spur competition. Because in UK, the main issue is actually they are being dominated by big banks, and there's not enough competition. So the whole digital banking framework is to actually spur competition.
Okay.
In Hong Kong, it is more about smart banking. In Singapore, it is actually to enhance financial inclusion as well as to promote the digital banking activity in the wholesale market.
Okay.
In Malaysia, the one that we are proposing is also to basically support financial inclusion and to address the unserved and underserved market.
Yes.
So the kind of framework that we roll out depends on the kind of contact setting that we have within a specific jurisdiction.
Time is never my friend. So we heard from Cindy, regulations are still a big barrier for her to navigate. So I want to get Zach's view on that, plus Hizam, because Hizam, he's a hybrid. He sits government, but he has the technopreneur heart and mind. So Zach first, how do you see that collaboration part to happen? Because without the private sector, the technopreneurs, working together with regulators and policymakers, it's a bit more difficult. But if, assuming that we can do that collaboration, what do you want it to be like?
So in terms of the central bank's perspective, you know, it's you got to sort of, it's a fine balance between sort of protecting end users, whether that's a consumer or another business, as well as, you know, fostering innovation. So it's sort of a fine line. In terms of Curlec's position, up until now, we've sort of made the conscious decision to stay as, let's put it, unregulated as possible. You know, just sort of don't fit within.
For you, if there's no regulation, better lah.
Yeah.
No, something like that.
Yeah, I mean,
at least the impression is.
That's right. There's more shackles on there. So,
give me one specific example that you want to do away with for Curlec.
Am I asked to bank Negara?
Yes. I'm giving you a chance.
No, I am.
I'm forcing you.
No, I suppose. Okay, a lot of the chat with banking, particularly digital banking, has to do very much from a retail perspective. You know, sort of consumer banking and sort of stuff. I still think, from our perspective, we tend to deal with a lot of SMEs, and SME banking is still incredibly difficult in Malaysia. Very clunky, and for a business to even open up a bank account, the amount of forms they've got to go through, loopholes they've got to, holes they've got to jump through is a lot. So
make it easy.
Make it easy, make it seamless. I know there's sort of eKYC policies coming up, sort of the shared database of that. So I think all those sort of initiatives are good. It's just, would like them to happen quickly.
You know, even when you want to marry somebody, sometimes you cannot go direct. You've got to go through an intermediary. So please solve his problem.
Well, solving his problems in getting married, I'm not sure of that. But what you said with us being hybrid or intermediary, that's exactly right. MDEC plays a role of a conduit, a bridge between what happens in the government, the regulatory side, as well as representing the voice of the industry. And we've been doing it for the past 23 years. I know that there are probably some queries with regards to MSC, but putting that aside, you know, what I mean by bridge is, maybe I can share in the context of Fintech.
Yes.
Because our aim and our KPIs is to ensure that companies like Curlec continues to grow. And we know that it's not just about him receiving capital, it's not just about him being able to go connect to SMEs and MSMEs, it's also about having them to be aligned with the regulatory requirements of the regulators. So if I can highlight some of the initiatives that we run, we have a space called Orbit in Bangsa South, right? It's a congregation point for fintech players to be able for them to be connected, to be bridged to people like Suhaimi and other folks in Bank Negara or SC.
Have you been to Orbit?
Yeah, we're based in Bangsa South.
Okay, cool. Have you been to Orbit?
Unfortunately not.
She will.
Okay.
Okay.
See, I'm a connector, but never get commission. Bad
So
thing.
the end goal of
Yes.
MDEC as a bridging organization and connecting the dots is to ensure that when they grow, country grows as well.
That's our voices. Now I want to hear from you. See, the organizer thought they put me this Britney Spears mic. They could be more efficient, but they can't take this away from me without touching me. We have laws in this country, so I'm going to run the minutes a bit. Come on, my friends from all over the world. I heard Bosnia is here.
Yes.
America? I don't care what Trump says, we are very friendly. Indonesia, you guys are here, right? Kabare, not Javanese. Medan? One question? Yes. Is the mic working there or he has to come to a mic?
He will be giving him a mic.
Yes. Otherwise, Mina will buy you tea.
There's Tariq outside.
Yes.
Ken?
Hello.
Yes, go ahead. Please introduce yourself and where you're from.
Hi, I'm Peter. I actually run a financial literacy YouTube channel.
Okay.
Yeah, and I'm also trying to build up a financial literacy startup as well.
In Malaysia?
Yeah,
Or?
in Malaysia.
Okay.
Yeah. So one of the things I want to ask you guys is that what do you think is the role of a corporate in terms of helping to build awareness and education in terms of fintech? Because one of the things is this, I myself am a registered financial planner, and one challenge I realize in the Malaysian community or even in Southeast Asia is the fact that these days more complicated financial products are being made available to consumers.
Agree.
Yeah, but most consumers do not have very
awareness
basic,
and literacy.
Yeah, very basic financial literacy. So it's kind of like you're giving a university syllabus thing to kindergarten students.
Bank Negara is all about inclusion and literacy, right?
So, what are some of the efforts?
I'm just going to get other question before I go to the answer. In the era of Captain Marvel, we're going to see Scarlett Johansson in her kick-ass new movie. Come on. One female question. I will buy you not the teh tarik cheap one outside. I will buy you expensive one somewhere. Come on. Please. One question. Yan. Going once? Otherwise, we're going to say that Bank Negara is male-dominated. So, can I get one? One lady? Any question? It doesn't have to be about fintech.
Okay, Cam, there is one question on Slido. I'm going to read it out.
Go ahead.
How would
Is it from a lady?
we don't know. It says anonymous.
I don't want. I want from a lady.
I'm sure
I
anonymous
need to ensure
is a
gender
lady.
diversity. I will come to that question, but I want lady first. Please. No, I'm not. Yan, please lah. Help me. My KPI down, ma. Rice bowl next year, I don't have anymore. Come on. No. Where?
There's one over there, lady.
Yes, can we get
Can
a
we
mic
get a
there?
microphone to her, please?
Thank you. You make my whole year's KPI already.
Thank you. I'm actually not from the fintech industry.
It's okay.
So
Me
hi.
too.
Hi, I'm a Martech, marketing tech. So hi, we're from Thailand.
Hello.
One question's for Zach, maybe.
Yes.
As one of the small angles, but you mentioned like every startup is moving towards fintech, right? Elaborate on that, maybe just a little bit.
Yeah. Okay, I'll get to you. The third question.
How would Bank Negara balance the need for disruption with security risks?
Okay. Who wants to start first? Bank Negara lah, dia host.
Okay. On financial literacy, I think there's a lot of focus that has been in place with regard to workplace financial literacy. And that has started a long time ago, even before we launched the National Financial Education Network last year. So that is ongoing. And there are a number of large corporations that are part of the network. I'm not sure whether you are linked to the network. Are you part of the network as well?
No.
So you should engage with the network because they are actually targeting different parts of the ecosystem in terms of educating Malaysians and elevating the financial capability of Malaysians, both individuals as well as small entrepreneurs. So that should be your starting point. And this is co-chaired by Bank Negara and the Securities Commission. And your second question just now? It's actually in terms of how we balance.
How do you balance the need for disruption with security risks?
So basically, when we engage financial players, we ask them whether they understand the kind of risk that they are dealing with. So basically, you need to be able to convince us that you are able to protect the interests of the customers in offering your solutions, managing the risk of, for example, cybersecurity risks, money laundering risks, consumer protection risks, market conduct risks, etc. And if you can demonstrate that to us, then you can basically roll out your solution.
Just contact you.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, entry point. Zach. Like,
Yeah, so-
many tech startup would have to be around fintech anyway. I think that's kind of angle.
Yeah, so I think, you sort of look at the global shift and you look into the West and you sort of see the role in which big tech, when I mean big tech, Google, Apple, Amazon, etc., and all moving to financial services now. Even when we look closer to home, we spoke about digital banking just now, and when you look at the digital banking applicants in Singapore, yeah, some financial companies, but Grab, C, which is Shopee, all of these guys didn't start off as fintech companies. All started off as technology companies, and now all starting to diversify into the fintech space. They've got such huge user bases, and in order for them to monetize, I see them all moving into the fintech realm. So that's what I mean by sort of tech really becoming fintech moving forward.
Curlec is Malaysia's next Grab, right, in terms of size. But you're not going to go to Singapore and raise funding, right? You're going to raise it in Bangsa South.
Yeah, we'll be right in orbit.
Last chance, no hands. I'm going to start from, got one hand. Yes. That's it. I know it. Captain Marvel era. Ladies, more questions. Can we have a mic to the backmost row? There, right at the back. Belakang sekali.
I guess I have a question for Cindy.
You look very pretty. May we know your name? This is for Zach, not for me. And where are you from?
My name is Wan Malawati from Bank Negara. I'm actually Encik Suhaimi's deputy.
Oh my. Did you give her KPI to ask questions, Encik Suhaili? Come on. No, I'm just joking. Go ahead, please. This is democratic process.
No, my question is addressed to Cindy. So Cindy just now elaborated on some of the so-called pull factor to the reasons as to why she set up in Thailand instead of Malaysia. I guess what I would like her to share a little bit is what were the push factor, as in what were the issues in
doing it here?
Yeah.
Okay. Over to you.
Hi, thanks for the question. It wasn't so much of a push factor at all. It was just about how we built our business model. So for me, from the very early stages, I knew that I wanted to build one of the most valuable companies in the world and being a very sustainable digital insurance company. So as mentioned, blueprints, having to know what are my barriers of entry is my job as a CEO. And one of the barriers of our entry is actually having a very clear understanding of the regulatory framework when it comes to licensing. So back then, and this wasn't because Bank Negara didn't have the intention or any clear direction to issue digital insurance licenses, neither did Thailand, neither did Indonesia. For us, it was just more about getting creative, finding the right region, the right location to build your team, to find the right area to launch your business model. So that was it. It wasn't so much of a push factor.
And I found, I'm a journalist, I interview many people, okay? My night job is interviewing people live. Many Malaysians, young ones especially, are saying this. It's not because we don't have it here, but they just see better opportunities and synergy. But my question to Cindy is, now that that question has been asked, I reverse the question, what can Bank Negara do, and MDEC to an extent, I saw you, Hizam, to make you launch this straight away for the 10 ASEAN nations? You can't do it alone. Obviously, resources need to be scaled up. But with partners like MDEC and Bank Negara, might you be able to grow something out of here for that?
Yeah, great question. So for me, because insurance these days, it's an invisible product. You don't have a physical product to sell. So insurance these days, how you predict a risk, because risk itself is changing. When you look at our car cost structure, whether it's motor insurance, because you have autonomous cars coming in, EVs coming in, health insurance, you have drugs are getting more costly, then you have the chance to actually predict more disease-related preventive care and all those things. So when our cost structure changes, risk changes, we need to engage with our regulators a little bit more on how to come up with the right blueprint, because even the way we sell, insurance still currently is actually a push product, but we need to distribute and find different ways to sell our product, whether it's immersing ourselves, integrating ourselves within large ecosystems, whether within Google, healthcare, Tesla,
Yes.
or communications, or even Grab or ride-hailing companies.
Yep.
So when you have the whole user journey being changed, whether you're selling a policy or when you're actually notifying a claims or distributing claims or providing a service to them, and the fact is that insurance process, every inch of it is regulated still. So we need to be able to engage with Bank Negara or any of our regulators in ASEAN to work out a proper solution that can promote, like they mentioned, promote innovation, foster it, but yet still, protect consumer mindset as well, and protection as well.
Jangan marah saya ya, organizer, tuan rumah nak cakap. Okay, go ahead.
Well, I mean, I think I just want to do a bit of pitch in terms of where Malaysia could feature when it comes to the fintech development in this region. And what we could offer is actually to be the test bed for fintech innovation in the region. And this is due to our unique features of the country. One is actually a diverse population with multi-ethnicity.
All right.
Second, high mobile and internet penetration rate at about 140% and 80% respectively. Our leadership in Islamic finance to cater for Islamic fintech with the potential to serve global Muslim community.
Yes.
Existence of both urban and rural communities within a couple of hours so that you can experiment with both solutions catering for urban and rural communities, and also supportive regulatory regime.
So how would you answer her pitch?
So basically, for you, in order for you to scale up and to serve, let's say, the wider Muslim population for, let's say, takaful services and all that, then this would be the place to start.
I was going to say that the way we look at technology companies have changed tremendously compared to 20 years ago. Technology, or ICT as it was known before, was just one of the many, many verticals. Now it has cut across horizontal. And given the fact that it has cut horizontal, there's a lot more ecosystem players that companies like Sunday and Curlec would have to reach out to in order for them to activate their solutions. What we do at MDEC, as I mentioned earlier, we play the bridging role. We welcome any companies, whether it's foreign or local companies, to grow. And as much as possible, as we are working with regulators, because we know that especially in hyper-regulated industry like banking or healthcare would require huge interventions from the regulators. We want to make it a lot more convenient, a lot easier. Right? Exactly. From setting up companies, it has become fully digitalized. In that part of the business, it's easier. Right? Assisting foreign knowledge workers to come into Malaysia, that is easy as well, with the right documentations and all that. How do we make it much easier? And I concur with what Suhaimi said in making Malaysia as a test bed. You know, you look at Malaysia, it's a bit of a hybrid country, almost schizophrenic, where we are neither developed nor developing. You have all the problems that Asia has, and this is a great place to start.
Just before Curlec, for the non-Malaysians, if you're coming on an ordinary visa, you should get the kick-ass visa from MDEC. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I think the first thing to know about ASEAN, to Suhaimi's point earlier, it's very hard to classify ASEAN from a fintech perspective as one sort of region.
Yes.
Financial services is incredibly regulated. Sort of going from country to country, even the socioeconomics within those countries, the demographics sway so differently. So I think on the central bank front, Suhaimi earlier mentioned this whole cross-border sort of faster payments network that we're building between Singapore and Thailand and Malaysia, which to an extent will help, particularly between these three countries. I think in terms of setting up in Malaysia, I'm going to steal an analogy that another Malaysian fintech company is used to describe Malaysia, which is that of Goldilocks.
Okay.
Malaysia is not too big,
not too small.
Not too small. It's just right.
Yes.
And so really for us at Curlec, we see this as it's our home market, but also a good test ground to see what we can do in the rest of ASEAN.
For me, I just want to combine Curlec and Sunday, and I can curl up every day. Financially and technology-wise, less than 5 words, very quick fire. What's the thing to think about for fintech, this topic, and 2020?
Continue to embrace change. it will come. No choice.
Malaysia opportunities, financial inclusions, Islamic fintech.
Serve the underserved.
Crisis is the best opportunity, actually.
What do I know? I'm just an old journalist born in the old era before internet of journalism, but I am still the only Malaysian journalist flying the flag at the World Economic Forum Davos, talking to the biggest of AI and shared ledger, blockchain, whatever it is, I hardly understand. My point being, he wrote my point to close actually, even with all that, if you do not communicate well, there's a reason why C is in the middle of ICT. Communication is not just solution as a service, it's not just server to server, peer to peer, venture capitalists to technopreneurs, but community must be kept abreast of what you're doing, because in the end, if it's not going to help save the climate, if it's not going to help save our environment, better yet, if it doesn't mean anything for that one person, the worst off in the furthest region, then why do we do all this? Not for me to answer. For you guys, I'm Bank Negara and MDEC. Thank you so much for giving us time. And please give a big round of applause to my panelists.